Is behind me, and behind him was the rest of the army I could muster. At last, the battle had begun. Those snow bears, as if they were the real ones, went at me when they saw my entire army. But at the same moment, my shadow soldiers rushed into battle too. My shadow soldiers began slashing the snow bears in different directions. Though some of them died, however, my soldiers were much stronger than them and fought mercilessly free. My army also had some incredibly powerful guys, mages, who stood behind everyone else. They had powerful fire spells, and the soldiers had fast regeneration. All of my shadow soldiers exceeded my expectations. Their regeneration was almost comparable to immortality, though it required a huge amount of mana. At this time, I heard something approaching us, and I looked up. I saw a large snow bear and realized that the leader I had been waiting for had finally arrived. I realized there was no way they could handle it, and my magic had already dried up. The shadow soldiers could no longer regenerate due to lack of mana. That's when I made the decision that it was time for my commander-in-chief to act. I ordered IGIs to head out and destroy the leader of the snow bears, and he in turn began to walk in slow steps and then ran sharply toward the snow bear. He began to crumble it in different directions with his big sword. This made the snow bear begin to bleed and scream at the top of his voice. He roared throughout the forest as Aegis cut off his big paw. They continued to fight, and the snow bear wanted to put up some kind of resistance, but in the end, he failed. For my commander-in-chief was very agile and had incredible strength. He slashed the snow bear every time it came near him. I kept watching as my commander-in-chief started running behind the snow bear's back and slashing his legs, causing the lower bear to be unable to stand on his big hind legs. However, the commander-in-chief then slowly went around him and began to slash him with his big sword. Eventually, Riss decided to end this battle. He swung his big sharp sword, cutting off the head of this big snow bear. I saw my commander-in-chief turn around and start walking toward me with the snow bear's head in his hands. I realized that I wouldn't have had a chance if Aegis hadn't used his sword. Then with my current level, we are on equal footing. But that was just me thinking that in fact when Igris threw off my snow bear head and kneeled down, I knew he was stronger than me. After that, I told him that he had done a good job, and it was time for me to turn the snow bears into my shadow soldiers. I successfully extracted the shadow from the leader of the bear, and a shadow began to emerge from the big snow bear that would obey me specifically. And so he appeared, and from behind the snow bear, the other shadows bears were also appearing. I looked at the leader of the bears and realized that I and my army were now much stronger than before. At the same time, outside, the white tiger head began to ask about his subordinates. How long has it been since they entered this dungeon? His subordinates replied that it had been about 3 hours, but inside, it had already been 3 days. They wondered how many were still alive, but the head of the white tiger began to tell them to give up any hope of a normal environment beyond the red gate and the scorching sun. The endless, clinging, poisonous bed bugs, or the northern stream, of course, the weak will be the first to die. And even if one were to adapt to the conditions of that world, one must provide food. In addition, they could try to eat monster meat. But these gates are too high for low-ranked hunters, and hunters of rank and below are likely dead. And as soon as Dong Song heard this, he realized that Jin Woo must be dead, and he was probably just wasting his time. But suddenly he began to say that the head claims that Jin Woo is not a member of the White Tiger as he found himself there. A subordinate of the head began to say that he was an old acquaintance of his. He asked permission to take part in the raid, but did so early, and reluctantly the head agreed, and brought him in, though he realized that his subordinate was trying to cover for Jin, who the hunter, so giving him away became problematic besides for an S rank. Hunter Hang Donggu knows of the existence of the Sank Hang Donggu, decided to say that there was nothing more he could do. In that case, he very quickly approached the subordinate of the head, took him by the throat, and lifted him into the air. Hang Donggu began to say that he has always had a neck for dealing with difficult situations. He feels that there is something suspicious here, and he must tell him the truth about what he is hiding. But at that very moment, the head of the White Tiger got really angry and told him to take his hands off his ward. Wang Donu starts smiling and says that he's ordering someone who's acting like he's the boss. The head of the White Tiger did not understand what he was talking about. At this moment, their aura began to increase, as if something glowing was flying near them. Everyone else knew that if this continued, these two would make an unreal disturbance here that would make everyone sick. But in the meantime, outside the gate, the captain was sighing cold air. His weapons were shattered and his shield shattered in two. He stood utterly scarred, but in front of him was an even more terrible monster who had done all this to him. And so the captain realized that all his efforts had been futile, and he had lost, for the monsters that attacked them began to drag and break everything in their path, destroying almost his entire group. It was no use to the hunter, who had even undergone special training to get to the elite. However, he had lost and could not accept it. But suddenly, the captain heard the sound of a bow shot, and an icy arrow flew straight at his associate who was standing behind him. He looked up and saw the snowy white walkers coming at him. These walkers came right behind Bigfoot. The captain began to turn around and noticed one of his subordinates approaching him. He was covered in blood and badly wounded, but suddenly something appeared that was able to finish off his subordinate. And now the captain was the only survivor the captain saw behind him, the White Walker, who had finished off his last comrade in arms. Out of fear, he began to scream and run far away from them, but out of the crowd of White Walkers appeared a mysterious monster who was riding a horse.